أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانيك هو الأبتر. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, just a very short rehash before we move on to our dear and beloved Hajj Mustafa. I just want to mention a quick point. As you know, this is the Fatimiyyah program for our beloved lady Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahu alayha. I just want to recap something beautiful which was said by the great lecturer and scholar Sayyid Muhammad Baqir Al-Qazwini when I was listening to one of his Fatimiyyah programs. He mentioned how Lady Khadija salamullahu alayha, the wife of the Holy Prophet, the richest person, not just the richest woman, the richest person in all of Arabia, she spent all of her money for the sake of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and she died penniless, with not a single iota of wealth to her name. And as a reward for this sacrifice which she made, the Holy Prophet gave her the land of Fadak. Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahu alayha, in that same fashion, with all of her energy, all of her body, her soul, she gave everything, she sacrificed for the sake of Islam up until the point of her final moment. Peace and blessings be upon her. Fatima Al-Zahra was a fruit of paradise. She was a reflection of all of the qualities that are admired in a woman in the religion of Islam at its very peak, at its highest point. And inshallah ta'ala tonight we'll have the opportunity to explore more as we delve into her sacrifice and her example. And for her love, inshallah, let us honor the Shahadat of today in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Yemen, in all parts of the Muslim world, from Sayyid Abbas to Sayyid Hassan, from Sheikh Izzuddin Al-Qassam to all of the Shuhada that followed and fought in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Muqawama, the resistance against the oppressors. For their love, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, with that said, I'd like to invite our beloved Hajj Mustafa Elachi to deliver the main lecture for tonight, followed by our dear brother Hassan Elachi, who'll also be delivering a presentation on Islam and creativity. Please welcome Hajj Mustafa with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Jazakum Allah khair. I was just about to ask you, Shabab, I feed off your energy. I need you to see it, inshallah, be closer to me. If I feel far away from my audience, I can't speak. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ومولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي وابن سيدي يا أبا عبد الله. لعن الله الظالمين لكم من الأولين والآخرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وارزقنا شفاعة سيدتنا ومولاتنا فاطمة الزهراء بنت محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين. أما بعد. Allah Azza wa Jal said in His glorious book, Al-Quran Al-Kareem, the book that is descended upon the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. This ayah is referring to the people that have attained Shahada, martyrdom in Islam. And there are those who await. There are people that are longing for this martyrdom. Of the believing people, the believing men, they have accepted the oath and they've made their trust with Allah Azza wa Jal. And there are of them that have already been martyred and passed away, and there are some that are waiting, and they do not change off this track. They're on this track of martyrdom. Now, we're in days where martyrdom is mentioned more often because of the amount of martyrs that we are seeing in the Islamic world. People that are fighting against hegemony, they're fighting against oppression, they're fighting against injustice. They are giving up everything in their capacity for the sake of a great cause, of a higher cause, of a noble cause. They're trading the heartbreaking trade of presence with their children, their wealth, what they have built, their spouses, and you find they are giving this up for nobility. But we find Allah Azza wa Jal, there are many references in the Quran Al-Kareem about Shahadat. Inshallah, tonight we are commemorating the master of the masters of the martyrs, the first martyr on the path of wilayah, on the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and that is the great martyr Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha. And it is important that on a night of her martyrdom, we understand what is martyrdom and what are the ab'ad of martyrdom. What are the different aspects and spheres of martyrdom? What are the types of martyrdom? Now, of course, in the Western world, when people are talking about the martyrs, you'll notice in some news reports, they're going to say those that were killed in battle. And then on the other side of the fence, people are saying those who were martyred. So you find that even the conception of the death of certain individuals are considered in two different spheres or two different understandings. But inshallah, we're going to enter this very important discussion with a salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Of course, Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha, not only is she one of the martyrs on the path of wilayah, she's the first martyr in the way of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salam. And you find that not only is she that, she is the wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And she's the daughter of Al-Mab'uth Rahmatan lil-Alameen Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. For of course it's appropriate that we mention, Assalamu alaikum, we mention what was the estimation of Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha in the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. أما ابنتي فاطمة فإنها سيدة نساء العالمين من الأولين والآخرين. A hadith we all know that as for my daughter Fatima, she is the leader of the women of the worlds from the very beginning to the very end. In other words, there is not a woman that walks this earth except she is the Sayyidah of this woman. And she is the best of these women. And she is the highest in value of these women. And that her presence on this earth is worth more than all of these women. So you find that she has a grand maqam in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Another aspect of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha is she is one of the youngest of the martyrs. You find if you go through the history of the Imams and the martyrdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa salatu wasalam ajma'in, you find, as according to our narrations, she probably did not exceed 17 years old in age, or perhaps just there's a few discrepancies, but she's very young. So you find either she's between 17, I think some narrations go up to 20. Al-Muhim, she is young. She's a young martyr in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal. And you find that she did not die as a martyr on the battlefield. La. Of course, with women, it's not obligatory for a woman to fight in the battlefield. But you find that she was martyred in defense of Imam Ali alayhi salam in a certain event. And inshallah, we want to discuss the spheres of martyrdom. Then we're going to go back to how this relates to Sayyidah Zahra salamullahi alayha. And not only that, we have to look at what does it mean to us? Because martyrdom is a far concept in this part of the world for us. The idea is that the traditional understanding is that there is a battle in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal, and you fight, and then if you are killed in this battle, you are martyred, and therefore you receive all sorts of rewards, inshallah, from Allah Azza wa Jal, including one of the highest maqams with Allah Azza wa Jal. What's the Islamic conception? What do we mean when we say that someone is a martyr in Islam? The first meaning, the obvious meaning, the Zahir meaning. The first meaning is that it is a person who trades their self. They trade their nafs for the sake of truth, for haqq and nusra, and for the success of the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. Sometimes you are martyred in the way of seeking or upholding a truth, that there is oppression, there is injustice, and there is someone slaughtering the innocent, and therefore you stand up in their defense and you use your body and yourself and whatever you have in your means. وَأَعَدُّ لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ, and fight against them what you possess of power. Allah Azza wa Jal is giving us this command as people, as human beings. So you find, for example, traditionally it's about people that fight in battle. But let's look at the stages of what it means to actually first give yourself. Let's stay with the first understanding of martyrdom, what that means, and the stages of, and then we'll go to other aspects of martyrdom. As in, does the office worker gain martyrdom? Does the tradie, the tradesman or woman, can they gain martyrdom? What's martyrdom in the sphere of the women? How do we achieve this status? Allah Azza wa Jal, through the narrations of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, we have narrations that the martyr is forgiven all of their sins, except their debts, of course. This is mentioned in the narrations, except their debts. There's always an emphasis on this. The martyr has the highest maqam with Allah Azza wa Jal. Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, he's told that he has a status that he cannot achieve except by spilling his own blood and taking a stance. Even though we know in the story of Karbala, militarily, it's a lost stance. Militarily, Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam did not win. But this is in the very limited view of what the world would say is a meaningful win. But when we look about the effect of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam throughout history and 1400 years later, what he does and to people's hearts and how we keep rebirthing and rebirthing through his martyrdom, we understand today, we know he's successful. We know today he's successful. Not only that, that's in the worldly sense. In the sense of the hereafter, he is successful in the sense that he has achieved the highest of statuses with Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, when you think about this, it's a very small trade with Allah Azza wa Jal. If you look at your life as a length of rope, and you look at the maybe maximum, generally speaking, 80 years perhaps you might live, 85, if you're lucky, 100 years. And then after that, it's eternity. Now, when we say eternity, we can't even fathom a place without time. Imagine a place without time. And you live eternity like this, whatever you have put forth in this world, you achieve eternity in that state. This is why, as a small segue, when they asked one of the Imams, why is it that people go to hell and they stay forever? Surely Allah Azza wa Jal, after 100,000 years of punishment, 200,000 years of punishment, 1 million years of punishment, this person, surely whatever they've done in the world has to be spoken for. They have served their sentence. The Imam alayhi salam, he answers very beautifully, and the reality is this. He said, if Allah Azza wa Jal placed this person forever in this world, they would forever behave the same way. They would forever usurp the rights of people. They would forever lie, cheat and steal. They would forever do what is muharram in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal. So therefore the condition of their heart is an eternal satanic condition. So therefore they earn an eternal satanic state in Jahannam. Likewise for the believer. The mu'min, the mu'mina, however long they are on this earth, they do all the af'al al-khair. If Allah Azza wa Jal gives you 1,000 years, the believer thinks, I can do a lot in 1,000 years. I can maybe establish a perfect community. Maybe I can establish great projects. Maybe I can rebuild all the maqamat of the children of Al Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Maybe I can cure world hunger, world disease. I can cure that in 1,000 years, and you're guaranteed this life. Imagine the relationships you can build. Imagine what you can do. This is the thinking of a believing person. Of course they are deserving of eternity in Jannah, because that's the condition of your heart. Allah Azza wa Jal gave us this religion for the purification of this heart, to make sure it's oriented towards Allah Azza wa Jal. Therefore, فَادْخُلُوا فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلُوا جَنَّتِي. He refers to, يَا أَيْتُهَا النَّفْسُ الْمُطْمَئِنَّةِ, a peaceful heart. ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. Go back to Allah, content with Him content with you. فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. Enter among my servants, enter my heaven. He talks about your heart, and that is your access to heaven, the eternal place, inshallah. With that, with the salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ya Ali.
ناري حيدري
Ya Ali.
صلوات بر فاطمة وعلي فاطمة بالأنتر صلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sincerity is the first step of martyrdom. Sincerity. There's a funny narration after one of the battles alongside Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. One of the ashab, after they won the battle, it's known that after the battle, whatever's left of the enemy, the anfal, the war booty, is yours. So you find that this sahib, he ran to this donkey. And as he tried to take the donkey, he was killed by an enemy. So when people were announcing, Hani'an lah, may Allah bless him, he's a martyr, the Prophet said, Innahu shahidul himar. He's the martyr of the donkey. Why? So it's funny, maybe at the time the humor wasn't there, but it's a funny ibara. Why? Because his intention was not sincere. He was fighting for a win. He was fighting to loot and steal, essentially. To take or not perhaps steal, but to take what is considered his. And you find that wars today are conducted for this reason. Wars today, they're conducted to take the resources of land. So they fight a war. This is the satanic intention. Therefore, you find that on the path to martyrdom to Allah Azza wa Jal, that you have ishq in Allah Azza wa Jal. The martyr is in love with Allah. All he sees is Allah Azza wa Jal. Everything he does, and you notice this when you watch the videos of Shahadat, when you watch people reciting the letters that they leave behind, you find that these people, masha'Allah, they are like mashayikh. They speak like scholars. If you've noticed, the videos when they're giving just little talks, you just need to put their imamah on their head and you see a scholar. Wallah. They're oriented towards Allah Azza wa Jal. They are completely sincere and their intention is 100%. We find that even in our narrations, if your intention is not for Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah leaves a reward for people in the akhirah for you to claim from those people that you showed your worship to, for example. Then there are people that are completely sincere, they have ikhlas to Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah accepts their deeds. And some of us, we sway in between. And I think we all fit in this category. We sway in between. And we have to constantly try to make it sincere. In other words, that nothing in this world is entering this niyyah. Yani mathalan, if you're praying and you recite beautifully, but only in the mosque. But at home, yalla bismillah, you power through you find that intention and sincerity are the first steps. That every action you do is very connected to Allah Azza wa Jal deeply. And then you find there's an action, of course. There is something that you have to, the trading of the nafs, we said when we defined what martyrdom is, it's trading a part of yourself. You're giving of your time. You're giving of your life in the traditional sense of martyrdom. And obviously, ultimately, in your death, inshallah, you find that they have a smile on their face. This is the commonly understood notion of martyrdom. But you find that we have many narrations that are very interesting. Say, مثلا, a person who's fasting. I heard a story of a brother in our community a few years ago. He's a father, rahmatullahi alayh. He was fasting and he was on the way to get iftar for his family. You're going to pick up the iftar and come back. The family realized that he hadn't returned from, and they were of course obviously hungry, perhaps impatient. He had a car accident and he passed away. Now we ask Allah Azza wa Jal, Ya Allah, he is fasting, he's in a state of worship, and he's doing an action, lillahi ta'ala. There's nothing more sincere than going to get food to feed the fasting. And he passes away. He attains martyrdom in this respect. Shahidul wajib, as they say. They have a term where they say that they're doing their wajib and they die in their wajib. A person in salah, for example, attains martyrdom. We have narrations, for example, that say, Man mata ala hubbi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad mata shahida. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. That if you die with the love of Muhammad or Ali Muhammad in your heart, Allah takes you a martyr. Now, we are not always in the state of love, you see. But you find that the more sincere a person is, the more they wake up in the spirit of this love of Muhammad or Ali Muhammad, this fellowship towards them. They are connected to them. They recite their ziyarah daily. At least in every salah, Assalamu alayka, Ya Aba Abdullah. Every day, Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Ali. They remember them. They condition their heart to love them. Allah takes them as martyrs. Another narration says that whoever dies drowning is a martyr. It's an interesting thing. Whoever mata mazluman mata shahida. Whoever dies oppressed. That is why when we hear about an airstrike, an Israeli airstrike in South Lebanon, in Gaza, they're not fighters. They're innocent. They're muwataneen. They're citizens. But they say a shuhada because they died oppressed. They died when they had a right to live on this earth. They had a right to not have the natural order of their life disrupted. But it was disrupted, so Allah takes them shuhada. When Allah takes them shuhada, they have a spiritual alignment with Sayyidu Shuhada. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam receives them because they were mathlumeen in this world. So you find that there is sincerity and there is a self-sacrifice. They give something of their self. And that's actually a level of detachment from this world. Many people, they say, why do you get married? Why do you enter khidmah? Why do you go into, for example, into the frontiers and you train and you fight to defend your nation, for example, a noble act to defend your nation against oppressors? But why do you start a family? Why do you have children? This is a question people ask. Why do you leave these women behind? How about your children? The martyr's mentality is a very different mentality. In fact, they're connected to reality. It is we have to work on our perspective. But inshallah we'll answer this question, a very important question, inshallah. Wa salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The martyr has a mindset. And we spoke about not just martyrs on the frontiers, we're talking about the martyrs in their wajib. The fathers who work and the sweat of their brow is evident on their faces. The jihad of the wife, of the jihad of the mother, where they spend their entire life in the khidmah of mu'mineen, of believers. They want to raise believers. The mother, as we know, has a fantastic status in Islam. Whether Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says your mother, your mother, your mother, then your father, in spiritual consideration of who you should be in service to more. The mindset of a martyr, as in the person who's preparing their heart for martyrdom, who's preparing to have a wonderful meeting with Allah Azza wa Jal. One of their qualities is that they're simple-minded. Now, what do we mean when we say they're simple-minded? Now, let's look at what a complex mind is. A complex mind is a mind that has a lot on. That their focus is frayed. A person who's complex means they have many areas of focus and they're pulled left, right, top, down, front and back. They're pulled in every direction. A complex machine means that it has many different aspects and internal workings, pulling in different directions but working in unison. We call that complexity. A simple-minded person is a person who's got one focus for all of their actions. Not several actions all focused in different places. I'll give you an example. Being a father, being a business owner and a father, having children as well. Their focus is on their upbringing of their children. Their focus is on their business, and their business frays into more complexity. Lead generation, how to create new avenues of wealth, for example. How to advertise, how to get yourself out there. Then children, how to raise moral people. And there is more complexity because they're in this part of the world, and how do you make them moral and aligned with Islam? And also, you have a spouse, and your spouse has needs. And your spouse has complexities about her too. And she has to deal with you as well, of course. You see, now, if you look at this in a very secular way, I can understand why you would be very depressed. I can understand why you'd be very unhappy. I can understand why you would want to even take your life, living this life, where you're frayed in over 100 different directions. When you start to look into your life and how complex it gets, it is actually very depressing. But when you have Allah Azza wa Jalla centered, all of a sudden you enter work. How does Allah want me to appear? How do I work? Allah. My spouse, how do I deal with her? Ya Allah. My children, how do I deal with them? With lutf and hanan. And how do I fight my nafs when I'm so tired? The hardest thing of being a parent is that you can be exhausted and hungry, and your child will not back off in their requests. This is, wallah, it's ijtihad. This is a way of martyrdom if you can sincerely focus yourself on Allah Azza wa Jalla. So you find that the martyr is a simple-minded human being because all they see is Allah Azza wa Jalla. They are absolutely infatuated with Allah. That is why we can have martyrs that are reciters. They're reciters and they're also in khidmah. You think a reciter would sit comfortably. Ya Allah, I recite dua all over the world. My ad'iyah, I mentioned everywhere. And this same person says, it's not enough. Ya Allah, I love you. I can't get enough of you. I only feel at peace when I'm with you. I understand when the imams tell me about you. I understand a bit of what they say. I understand why Imam Sajjad alayhi salam would spend hours and hours and hours in the nights making his dua. I can understand why his companions would sit and record what he was saying so they can pass it on to future generations. This love is unbelievable. It is unmatched. That is something worldly people that fight against believers don't understand. When a person is in business and they are with a believer who's in a competing business, the believer does not try to cut the rizq from this person. What does the believer say? He says, Allah Azza wa Jal provides for me and for him. Whatever's written for me will come to me. I'm not going to try to cut his business. The worldly person thinks there is only one customer and I have to fight this person for this customer. So they'll do underhanded things. It's a different mentality. One is very complicated, very complex, and very stressed and very unhappy. And the other side is content with Allah Azza wa Jal because their heart is in full trust. And this goes to the next aspect. A martyr, a future martyr, whatever aspect of martyrdom Allah decides for this person, has absolute trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. They trust Him. They say masalan, when things are very tight financially, and I like to bring these examples about business and money because if I'm honest, our life is centered around this. We have to accept that fact, and also family and things of that nature. They say the same one, this is a narration, I'm paraphrasing from a narration, that Imam Ali alayhi salam, I believe it's the Imam, he says, the believer who worries, why does a believer worry? About their rizq, about the money. The same one who brought him into existence, who fed him this entire time, up until the moment that he's in, why does he have to worry about his tomorrow if every single yesterday was taken care of? At some point, if you have a friend that gives you something every single day, and they did this, however old you are, 30 years, wouldn't you trust that the next day they're going to give it to you? Wouldn't you expect it actually? The expectation is Allah Azza wa Jal, either He takes me or He gives me, but there's no in between. Yes, there's poverty in this world. Allah receives them and gives them their ajr. They're never empty-handed. But the majority of earth, population's increasing. We survive. Even though we're in the best part of the world, everyone still survives. They still live, and they still live a very full life. It's only a minority of people really that are dying in droves or being killed, and etc. The world really is actually inclined to life, and Allah's providing for everyone. In fact, the providence is so great. The issue we have is not that Allah's not providing. Wal-'ayadhu billah. The issue is, as the hadith says, I've tested the poor with patience and the rich with miserliness, with bukhl. Allah has given more than we need. Some people say that the needs of food are 10 times greater than what we actually need to eat. So 3 meals a day for every human being, 8 billion humans, there is 10 times that amount. The issue is distribution, and that is in the free will and the free agency of the human being, and Allah will test them with this, Azza wa Jal. The martyr lives in a different space. Their feet are planted on the earth, but their heart is very high in the sky. You notice that the martyr, the future martyr, is very focused on the meaningful, on what is ma'nawi, not what is maddi, not what is material. Yes, the martyr goes, the believing person who's seeking martyrdom, they focus on Allah Azza wa Jal and they get their halal from Allah Azza wa Jal, but that is not the focus, it's a means, it's not the end. The end to them is my, the example is, there is a person who prays according to the Islamic laws, so they can say they prayed the correct way. And there is a person who prays the correct way, but also watches his heart because he worries about the acceptance of the prayer. 2 different prayers. One worries about doing it correctly according to the book. The other one does do that, but they worry about its acceptance, so they watch their heart during the prayer. And this is what Allah Azza wa Jal is always looking at. Azza wa Jal. You find that the martyr is fearless. The person who's going to be martyred, they're fearless. You see people that say, let the enemy bring whatever they want to bring. I stay in my home. This is my land. This is fearlessness. We don't understand this. Imagine you're in a position where you're in your home and someone is trying to force you out. Here in Australia, and there's a bulldozer out front and they start to charge at the house, and you protest and you stand in the way of this bulldozer. This is the same context. Can we imagine ourselves with the comfort we've been raised in to actually put ourselves for the sake of a higher principle, for the sake of your memory serving and inspiring people in the future? The martyr is fearless. The martyr is confident. So when you're trying to aim for high business goals, for high spiritual goals, you're fearless. You don't care, or you're not affected by the social pressures. I can't imagine, subhanAllah, sometimes when we want to perfect an idea, our scholars, what they do is they say, what's the reverse? Yani, mathalan, is it possible a martyr on the path of martyrdom, dying in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal, whichever avenue we discussed before, like we said, in our context, it's not battle. It's battling ourselves. Do you really think that this person shakes a woman's hand at work? They're feeling pressured? La. They're fearless. I'm worried about falling out of work. Allah Azza wa Jal will put me in the right place. In fact, Allah Azza wa Jal will give me dignity. And myself, I've really experienced this. I have achieved more respect from the female in the workplace by not shaking her hand than shaking her hand. Wal'ayadhu billah. As in, alhamdulillah, I haven't. At times, say, mathalan, I used to, and sometimes, in fact, in high pressure sort of situations, it's permissible to wear a glove, according to the fiqh. I'll say the Sistani, mathalan. If you wear a glove and don't compress, this is permissible, because this is taken from a narration where some ladies wanted to take blessing off the Prophet, and he said he can't touch them, but he put his arm out with his da'aba over it, and they gave a very soft touch. This is in one of our hadith. This is permissible if the circumstance is very difficult. But otherwise, that's still an observance. Your interactions with women are very strict. And this is very respectable. And I'll tell you, in this context and day and age, wallah, it is a form of izzah for a believing man and for a believing woman. There is nothing to be feared. There's no loss to be feared. And in fact, shaitan does this to us. Inna shaitan ya'idhukum al-faqr. Shaitan, he tries to make you afraid of loss. Think about it. Every time you've done something haram, wasn't there a fear of loss involved? Think about it. If I don't go and do this act, my friends won't accept me. If I go and do this act, I might not get the job. If I have to pray in this position, they might know I'm a Muslim. Oh, I've been caught out. Like you're guilty of something. This is a very important notion. The person on the path of Shahadah, via their nafs, via the killing of their self, does not do this. You find they are confident. They have a firm conviction in their faith. Now, this takes us to the next aspect. So we're saying that the martyr has all these qualities. How do you attain these qualities? Wallah wa billah, the best way to attain the highest qualities is through knowledge. Because you can't attain anything you don't know about. You see? The way you attain a thing is that you learn about it and you exhaust yourself in understanding it. For example, humility. They say you need to be humble as a believer. Or is that right or not? What we imagine is humility. Assalamu alaikum, alaikum assalam. We imagine gestures, and that's good. These are good gestures. The bowing in front of a person, standing up for the elderly, for example. Shaking with two hands in some cultures. I know I think in the Pakistani culture and other cultures, they clasp with two hands. The Afghani culture, sign of respect. Two hands, not one. You see? These are types of adabiyat that are very important. But there is an internal humility because you can act like this but not be humble. Sah la la. Is that right or not? Internally, how does humility come about? It is through the acknowledgement, the true understanding that you know for a fact you are not the best person in the room and you never will be. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Above every knowledgeable person is a more knowledgeable person. Allah Azza wa Jal, He even tells His Prophet Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, He tells him, Ya Ali, Ya Ali.
صلوات بر شاه نجف علي المرتضى ذل الصوار صاحب ذوالفقار علي المرتضى بالأمطار صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد. خيلي متشكرا مأجورين إن شاء الله. You find that the martyr has a firm conviction through knowledge. Humility is achieved when you exhaust yourself in understanding a topic. You come to a point where you say, I know nothing. Wallah, many of our scholars, the Prophet says this, whoever says that they are a scholar, no, they are jahil. من دعا أنه عالم, مضمون الحديث, I might say it incorrectly, but its meaning, من دعا أنه عالم فعلموا أنه جاهل. Whoever says I'm a scholar, I know everything, he's ignorant. Why? Because knowledge is limitless. For you to think you know a topic fully, that means you're assuming that you are limitless like Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the peak of arrogance. We have to be very careful of this. But humility through knowledge is genuinely, sincerely, without having to act in any humble way, we know for a fact we don't know everything. And we will never know everything. And there is always someone that is better than us in every single way possible. Is that right or not? This is intellectual humility. This is understanding academically. When I study myself and I study the subject that I am endeavoring to use as a career or in my career, there is someone better than me. Therefore, I can't feel pride because it's not possible. This is actual humility, and then you have to remind yourself every time you think of, and this becomes a practice. This becomes your suluk, your way of, so now you've understood. Now when the martyr has the knowledge, he practices that every day till he trains his brain to talk to him that way. Say, mathalan, a person has an issue with their anger. We all get angry. Let's be honest, I got angry today. We all get angry. Sah la la. Anger, for example, usually stems from, when you look at anger, it comes from a sense of injustice against us. Someone says a word to us and it's not about us. How dare you ascribe this quality to me? It makes you angry. You want to defend yourself. It's not wrong. That's natural. You want to defend your sovereignty. You don't want anyone to ascribe what is wrong about you. But humility, for example, will teach you, you have to give an ear to everyone because everyone has value. Maybe the criticism is true. Let's be honest, maybe people's delivery isn't the best. But there could be truth in what they're saying. So maybe I need to give it an ear. Again, this is humility in action. And this is actually curing your arrogance and also your anger. Eventually, you become like Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. When he's in Syria and someone asks him who he is, he says, I'm Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam. He says, I'm Hassan. And the man starts to curse him and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And Imam al-Hasan patiently waits. Because he knows in his mind that this person has been misinformed. And I'm not going to take this personally because the Imam is egoless, doesn't have an ego. He's pure nature, fitra. And then he says in that very famous hadith, if you were naked, we'd clothe you. If you were hungry, we would feed you. If you were thirsty, we would quench your thirst, etc., etc. Up until the point where the person says, I believe in the walaya of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Alayhi salatu wassalam. There are many examples of martyrs that we have. We have wonderful martyrs in our modern history. I won't mention names on the member. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
لبيك يا نصر الله.
يا نصر الله. أحسنت
علي حيدري
يا علي.
صلوات برات عن حسين شهداء كربلاء بالأمطار صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Well, since that horse has left the carriage, we have very beautiful martyrs in our history. There's one martyr, he's Iranian. They were talking about how he was in his life. So for example, if there was a shahada of one of the imams of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, the sheikh would say, be at the Husayniyah at 6 a.m. so we can set up everything. Put up the sawad, put the chairs out on the sides, get everything ready for the aza of that day. People would come and find that it was all done or half done. Because he would wake up at 4 in the morning, pray his Salatul Layl, and he'd go to the Husayniyah, open early, and he'd do everything. Sheikh would say to him, you are very greedy for thawab, aren't you? He says this, I'm greedy for thawab. He goes, yes, you're greedy for thawab. This is the type of mentality they have. They fight to do khair. They do as much khair as possible. This is the mentality of a martyr. Another story rather. Hajj Mustafa Chamran. Hajj Mustafa Chamran has a wonderful story. We're talking, he is a professor in an Ivy League university in the United States of America. He's very wealthy, he's established. And you find that he leaves, he tells his wife, I'm going to fight, and he's seeking the path of martyrdom. She refused, so he files for a divorce. Basically, he divorces her. He goes to train with people, goes to train. You find that he marries a woman in South Lebanon, he learns how to speak Arabic, and he was martyred in the 8-year war versus Iraq, or the army of Saddam, la'natullahi alayh. But you find that he had a very high position. His family is still alive today, and they're living in America, and they're living the way they live. He chose to leave all of that behind for the sake of a higher cause, to defend the land from oppressors. And of course, we had a most recent martyr. What did he give for 32 years? Sayyid Hassan, rahmatullahi alayh. Underground for most of the time away from his family and his friends. Although the sadness is so deep, the sadness is really, most of us have not gotten over it. Personally, I don't like to listen to his voice anymore. I used to love his voice. Now I can't listen to his voice. I find it very difficult. We're all experiencing this in our own way. But when you look at the context of his martyrdom, you think, I think it was the best for him because he'd lost his mother, rahmatullahi alayha, and all the best of his companions. Abu Abdullah alayhi salam in Karbala, when Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam was martyred, he said, now my back is broken. What world is there for Abu Abdullah after Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam? And what world was there for Sayyid Hassan after Sayyid Fuad and the rest of the martyrs? What world was there? Sayyid Safiyuddin, what world was there after Sayyid Hassan? So you can understand their ishq for shahada. You can understand, and maybe it's time that they leave and people, inshallah, with less rahmah are put in their place, inshallah. Because they were very merciful, even to their enemies. Look at the illustrious life they've lived. Look at what they've given. They've given nations, not just the Lebanese. They have given every Shia in Mawali Azzatun Nafs. To the extent, the Qasaid in Iraq, in fact, after the Shahadah of Sayyid Hassan, 100 people were named. They named their sons. Does anyone know? Nasrullah. That same day. 100 registrations of the name Nasrullah in Iraq. The Qasaid that came out, what's one poet saying? He says, it's a fakhr that he's the son of Najaf. They all a'taz. They seek this honor through. This is the legacy of them. Although it pains when they go, we see the ta'thir of a person who's on the path of martyrdom. And not only just that, it wasn't just about battle, it was about the mawa'id, the advice, the lectures, the knowledge. They have the highest status because they were scholars and they were fighters. When ISIS were at their highest in Iraq, you found that old scholars wearing the imama and wearing the badle, the military gear and the imam on their head. Because they said, I've studied all this time, but now it's my chance. Now this finally something genuine. You know, they feel alive, but they want both. They want both. They want the highest status. They want to be with Abu Fadl alayhi salam. They want to be with Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. They want to be received by Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. So we find that martyrdom has many ab'ad. But we have a narration from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, which inshallah, if you listen to this narration, you can be granted martyrdom through this narration. Wallah. He says, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله من سأل الله الشهادة بصدق بلغه الله منازل الشهداء وإن مات على فراشه. If you just ask Allah deeply, sincerely, بصدق, from your heart, for shahada, Allah will give it to you even if you die in your bed. Because we say that your intention, إن الأعمال بالنيات. Sometimes you intend a thing and you don't get to receive this thing. Allah gives it to you anyway. You intend for ziyarah and you die before you go on your ziyarah. Allah gives you the ziyarah. He gives you the hajj. So if you have a niyyah for shahada, Allah Azza wa Jal, inshallah, will give to you that shahada. Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. Political circumstances led to her martyrdom. We find on the deathbed of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Sayyidah Fatima is leaning over her father. Rasulullah is 63. And she's leaning over him as a young woman. She has her children. She needs her father. We all need Rasulullah. We're all the orphans of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. We are orphans of them because we missed. But the narration states that أنا وعلي أبوا هذه الأمة. Me and Ali are the fathers of our nation. So we are the yatama of Muhammad or al-Muhammad. But Sayyidah Fatima, this is her. Fatimatu bid'atun minni. She's a part of Rasulullah. Rasulullah whispers something in the ears of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. The people that were looking at her saw her cry, then saw her laugh, smile. Ya Fatima Al-Zahra, what makes you sad and happy? She says, my father said that it is my time to leave this earth. And that made her sad, that made me sad. But then he said, but you will follow me very soon, so that made her happy. It wasn't 6 to 9 months before the Shahada of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. The first Khalifa sends the future second Khalifa to get the bay'ah of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, Ali alayhi salam. Now why is she the first martyr on the path of wilayah? Because she is the first person and human being to give herself in the way of Imam Ali alayhi salam in his defense. When they approach her door and they say, they bash the door and they scream that they want Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam to come out to give bay'ah to Abu Bakr. One person says to him, but in the house is Fatima. He says, wa'in, who cares? So what? The daughter of Rasulullah, the greatest of the women to walk this earth, the example for all women, the most pure of women, the most knowledgeable of women, the woman who was a scholar in Medina, the women who exegesis of Quran from Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. The first female hawza in Islam is Sayyidah Fatima. Who cares if she's in this house? Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, she stands up, she goes to the door. And I want you to imagine, it is not likely, even men as men, a man does not abuse a woman even if it's your enemy's wife. A real man, these were not real men. These were small men. These were worldly men. They were not men. They were animals in men's clothes. So you find when Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha tells them to leave, They say, Wallah, if you do not open this door, we will burn the house down, and they set fire to the door. And imagine the children of Al Muhammad in the sorrow that they're in, smoke billowing inside the house, and eventually the la'een kicks the door in, and Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, who is pregnant with her muhsin, is pressed against the wall and the door. Some narrations say that a mismar, a nail, entered the womb of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. And you find that Sayyidah Fatima is compressed and she falls to the floor. We have narrations. Did Imam Ali alayhi salam defend? Yes, he defended. And he knocked him down on his feet. And he said, if it was not for the words of Rasulullah, then I would spill your blood. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he told him not to kill or spill blood after me, whatever happens, because of the sake of Islam and the Risala of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. This was the sacrifice, the shark in the throat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. But I'll fast forward. Even with her pain and her broken rib and the nail that entered her body and the miscarriage of her son Muhsin, you find that Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha was very sad and depressed. She would cry, and the people of Medina heard her crying so much, they said, we are so distressed seeing her cry all the time. So they built her a house called Baytul Ahzan, where she can go and mourn Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. These are the last moments of a young woman's life, not just any woman, the daughter of Rasulullah, the one whose womb gave us the Imams. That Imam al-Hujjah, Ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, his mother is Fatima Al-Zahra. This is how she's treated. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he said, when we were doing the ghusl of Sayyidah Fatima, when I was running my hands over the body of Sayyidah Fatima, I noticed that when I dragged my hands over her rib cage, we had bones sticking out, and I'd feel the bumps on her rib cage. And he did not know about this because she never complained to Amir al-Mu'mineen. She did not want to hurt the heart of Amir al-Mu'mineen, so she never complained about the protracted rib coming out of her chest. How did she breathe? How did she pray? How did she cry with a broken rib? We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to raise us with Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahi alayha. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal, as is narrated by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, that he named her Fatima because the people that love her are weaned from the fire of hell as she is, inshallah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of the Imam and to ease the distress upon the Ummah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give victory to the Mu'mineen in Parichanar, in Junub Lubnan, and inside the Biqa, وفي غزة, وفي الضفة الغربية, the West Bank, وفي Afghanistan, وفي Iraq, وفي Yemen, and wherever the Madlumiyah of the believers is present. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give them success and to give them iman, to give them energy and nashat, and to destroy the enemies of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. With a salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ولشهدائنا وعلمائنا جميعا نهدي لهم ثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أحسن الله إليك إن شاء الله. واشكري. بسم الله الرحمن
For you. It's yours?
صلوات بر محمد و آل بیت محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Before I start, first I just want to acknowledge the beautiful Tirmizi family, Hussein and his dad, because I've noticed I always do these programs. And honestly, some of the best talks I've ever attended were at these programs. And yeah, like I really appreciate all the effort they've been putting into these programs, because like I said, some of the best talks I've ever like come across were from these programs, and I feel like I have a lot to live up to right now, but inshallah, Allah grants me the confidence necessary and the knowledge necessary to just keep the ball rolling, inshallah. فَلْيَنْظُرُ الْإِنسَانُ مِمَّ خُلِقَ. So the reason I'm here is because I feel like as an ummah in general, we're all facing an issue where we grow up and then due to societal norms, we lack creativity, imagination. And the reason that this is an issue is because imagination is the fuel and the engine to enhance your fitrah, right? So this probably sounds like nonsense at this point, but I have evidence and proofs and different analogies to use that could hint towards this. And first, I'll start off with 3 examples of why imagination and creativity is a must in Islam in general. So first, we'll just start off with the story of our prophets and our imams. So simply, we're all gathered here because of our love for the prophets and the imams, right? We're drawn to the story. So the best analogy I could use is if you look at the Western world, they have these events like Comic-Con and whatnot where there's like a mass following of people that attend these events dressed in cosplay, and they're all there bonded by one thing, which is a love for a story, whichever franchise or series they follow, right? It could be Harry Potter, Star Wars, for example. As Muslims, we're not different from them. We're also drawn to a story, right? The only difference is, the only thing that separates us from them is that the story that we follow is a true story, and it's a story of life, the story of mankind, right? So, for example, let's just take Karbala, right? We can all agree that's the greatest story to come out of this planet. With Karbala, let's just say the entertainment industry wanted to put $500 billion to create the best film, and it took a whole decade to produce it. They could get all the best minds, or the best creative minds, or the best screenwriters, the best directors to produce a story. However, no matter what they come up with, it will never be as good as the story of Karbala, simply because the story of Karbala was written by the greatest writer of them all, which is Allah, and it was performed by the greatest actor of them all, right? So that's the story that can't be. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So on the second point, if you look at the Quran itself and the hadiths that follow, you can see that the Quran uses a lot of literary devices and language devices like allusions, metaphors, symbolism, imagery, similes. And the hadiths that follow after that by the Prophet or the Ahlul Bayt, whoever it be, they use a lot of creative techniques such as poetry. But if you think about it, they had to, because the Prophet and the Imams had to deliver such a godly and cosmological message. The only way they could do that was by translating it to the human mind, which is through imagination and creativity, right? And the third point is simply just aiding our belief in fitrah. That's also why we need to establish imagination in our deen, because the best example I could use is if you look at Surah Yasin, where it says our body parts will testify against us. A lot of people, they use this verse, so during the wudu, let's just say they're wiping down their face or the arms, they reflect on what each body part contributed to them that day. That itself, they're using the imagination to aid the deen and follow through with that, right? So before I develop in and talk about how the link between taqwa and imagination and how it all connects, first I want to talk about the ontological argument, which is developed by Saint Anselm of Canterbury. And the ontological argument is pretty simple to discover. So it's simply the discovery of divine existence through one's logical thought process, right? So existence depends on 4 categories: existence in reality, existence in both, existence in our imagination, or existence in neither, right? Infinite perfection exists in reality. Everything perfect exists in reality, right? For example, let's just take this water bottle. Right now, there exists 2 water bottles. The one in my hand, the one in my imagination, the room of my imagination. However, the one in my imagination is not as good as this one, because the one in my imagination, it's not as detailed as this, it's not as consistent as this one, and it can't even, it can't feed me, it can't quench my thirst like this one. Because the one inside my head, the second I stop thinking about it, it's gone. However, this remains. So what I'm saying is, Allah's imagination, which is our reality, overpowers the imagination that goes on in our head, right? So now let me just break down the ontological argument if it's still not getting to you. So as I mentioned, it's broken down in simple steps. So first, God is the greatest thing we can think of, right? Infinite perfection, the greatest thing we can think of. And as we've, now God is existing as an idea in the mind, right? Infinite perfection, existing as a whole in our mind. And as we mentioned, things can exist either in our mind or reality, or neither. So if God only existed in my mind, he will no longer be the greatest thing I could think of. The greatest thing I could think of would have to exist in reality. If he was bound by my imaginative realm, then he won't be the greatest thing I can think of, right? Then I'll just be God, astaghfirullah. But that's not the case. So if you look at Ibn Sina, he's this great philosophical mind from the Middle East a few centuries ago. What he would do is he had this best experiment where it's called the floating man experiment. So take a man and put him in this echo chamber where he's unable to feel anything, so he's floating in a vacuum in some space. It's a dark room and he can't hear anything. So therefore he's lost all contact with all 5 of his senses, right? He can't feel his clothes on him, he can't feel anything, he can't hear anything, he can't see anything, and he can't taste anything, right? The only thing that will be active and keeping him going is his mind. He won't have any access to any of his, he won't even be aware of his own limbs, right? But the one thing that he will be conscious of is his own mind. That's because his mind and your 5 senses are separate. So there's this story of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq that I like to talk about, where he was approached by a man named Abu Shakr, and Abu Shakr says to the Imam, you know, you're such a great mind, how can you prove the existence of God, right? Can you show me evidence of creation? So that's when Imam Jafar as-Sadiq grabs an egg and lays it straight on his palm and holds it up to Abu Shakr's face and says, you see this egg? What you can observe right now is the egg as a whole, right? It's hard and shell. However, you know within it, there's a thin lining of substance, yeah? And inside of that, there's the egg white, which resembles some sort of liquidy silver, and inside of that, there's the egg yolk, which represents like a metal gold. Abu Shakr replies, there's no doubt about that. That's indeed what's inside of an egg. So Imam Jafar as-Sadiq says, eventually this egg will hatch open, and what would appear would be either a chicken or a bird, or an animal, right? Abu Shakr replies, there's no doubt about that. So Imam Jafar as-Sadiq says, you did not see anything enter this egg or leave it as you've observed it, right? There's no way to, it's whole. He said this itself is evidence of the creation of the universe. So Abu Shakr says, so this is, observing the creation of the universe is not something I could see with my eyes, touch with my skin, taste with my tongue, smell with my nose, or hear with my ears, right? And that's when Imam Jafar as-Sadiq says, that's correct. What you've mentioned was the 5 senses, and to perceive God, you don't need any of that. Because obviously we can all agree that to perceive and comprehend God, it's beyond human imagination, yeah? So what he's saying is that analogy he used of the egg, that's for people who base their recognition on ilm and perception. So where I'm getting at with this point is that I'm leading into the thought process of how our imagination is a divine gift and tool by Allah to perceive Him, because we all know we can't visualize Him. However, perceiving is different. You know, I'm not saying imagine a God-like figure in your head. Perceiving and growing God consciousness are 2 different things. So I want to talk about Imam Khomeini's structure, since he was a great mind. So obviously, imagination, as much as it is a divine tool, it's also a test. So think about like $1 million, right? I could give 2 people $1 million. Let's just say it's halal sourced. However, depending on how they use that $1 million, one could use it to fund wars and cause destruction. The other can use it to build up homes or rebuild broken villages, right? The haram itself the money itself isn't haram. It's just how it's used. So the same could be applied with our imagination, right? So Imam Khomeini he believes that we, as humans, were given 3 powers, and these 3 powers are the benefit for mankind and ourselves. So it starts off with Al-Quwwa al-Wahmiyya, which is the power of invention and imagination, Al-Quwwa al-Ghadabiyya, which is the power of passion or anger, and Al-Quwwa al-Shahwiyya, which is the power of lust and sensuality. So these 3 things, they could be used for either good or bad. So what he's saying is, if you use it to do good in your life, you build a better akhirah for yourself, because if you use these powers in a humane way, you build a better spirit for yourself, and that leads to a better akhirah, right? So I want to talk about the Quran once again, about how it's this beautiful, creative poetry that tends to really fascinate our minds, right? We're all here because we can all agree that the Quran is clearly the best piece of writing left for man behind, right? So this, in Surah Tawbah, it mentions Jannah, and it says, Allah has promised the believers both men, women, gardens under which rivers flow to stay there forever, and splendid homes in the gardens of eternity, and above all, the pleasure of Allah. That is the truly ultimate triumph. So as you can see, it's using earthly terms to describe a metaphysical experience. Simply because we haven't experienced Jannah yet, We can't describe it other than using earthly terms. And the earthly terms it uses is obviously good things we can think about. It doesn't use bad things to describe heaven, otherwise that's not heaven, that's just hell in that case, right? So I want to go through a quick exercise with all of you real quick. I want to read a surah from the Quran. However, I also need you to help me out on this. I need you all to just close your eyes and really envision about what I'm going to say, because at the end of the day, these aren't my words, these are Allah's words. So if everyone could just please close their eyes and listen to my voice. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. His light is like a niche in which there is a lamp. The lamp is in a crystal. The crystal is like a shining star, lit from the oil of a blessed olive tree, located neither to the east nor the west, whose oil would almost glow even without being touched by fire. Light upon light, Allah guides whoever He wills to His light, and Allah sets forth parables for humanity, for Allah has perfect knowledge of all things. Surah An-Nur. So you all would have imagined the same concept, the same idea, however, it would all visually look different, and that's all dependent on you as a person, the conditions you live through, the places you grew up, the things you've seen, the experiences you've experienced. So that's the Quran as an objective truth, which is haqq, with your own subjective view to it, so your own personal view. And me personally, I reckon if it wasn't for English in high school, I would have gotten a mystery mark on my ADA, so I decided to put that to use and highlight all the literary devices used in this verse alone. And as you can see, it uses a wide range of metaphors, similes, and imagery, especially symbolism. These are to enhance the greatness of the words coming, right? And as I mentioned, the story of the Quran and the message that the Prophet had to deliver was too cosmological and great. He had to dumb it down for us humans with literary devices. And the whole Quran is filled with many new miracles, right? It's sort of like a code. And that itself is a creative production of the Quran, right? So for example, in Surah An-Najm, the distance between the earth and the stars is 861 letters. Distance between our earth and star Sirius is 8,611 light years. It's things like that where it's like a calculation, and it's like a sort of like a mathematical produce that shows us that each word in the Quran was planted there with intention. So that means everything we read from the Quran cannot really be taken as a coincidence. For example, the term Imam is mentioned 12 times. You know, I personally don't think that's a coincidence. It's sort of like there's multiple layers to reading. You can read the words as they are, or you can see the bigger picture. And Imam Ali said that the entire Quran is summarized in the Fatiha, and the entire Fatiha is summarized in the dot of the ba, right? So what he's saying is that this divine book can be perceived by a divine tool, which is, like I said, your imagination and visualization. So since we're on the topic of Imam Ali, it's been reported that every now and then when he would pray, he would sometimes collapse and pass out, and then he would get up and finish his salah. So when he was asked about why he would pass out during his prayer, it was due to his taqwa. He would grow such high God consciousness to the point he would pass out. And this is not him saying he sees God visually, right? It's more about comprehending and grasping who he's standing in front of as he's praying. So the conception of knowledge involves both imagination and understanding. Imagination is a clear mirror, and the taking of lessons from things around provides warning and counsel. It is enough for improving yourself that you should avoid what you consider bad in others. So in terms of what I said about him passing out, think about it like this. The greatest warrior of all time, Imam Ali, he himself would pass out comprehending God. You know, he feared nothing. He was always ready to die beside the Prophet in battle. Yet he himself feared God like no other. So this was in Nahj al-Balagha. Dilib al-Yamani asked Amir al-Mu'mineen whether he had seen Allah. When he replied, "Do I worship one who I have not seen?" Then he inquired, "How have you seen him?" Then Amir al-Mu'mineen replied, "Eyes do not see him face to face, but hearts perceive him through realities of belief. He is near things but not physically contiguous. He is far from them but not physically separate. He is a speaker but not with reflection. He intends but not with preparation. He molds but not with the assistance of limbs. He is subtle but cannot be attributed without being concealed. He is great but cannot be attributed with haughtiness. He sees but cannot be attributed with a sense of sight. He is merciful but cannot be attributed with a weakness of heart. Faces feel low before his greatness and hearts tremble out of fear of him." So when he says, "Do I worship one who I have not seen?" he's not talking about visually seeing him. He's talking about he observes him through this world around us. Just like me, I see a God right now in this room, as in looking around, seeing all you, seeing this room we're in. This is how I personally see God, right? It doesn't mean I'm physically seeing him as a whole, but I see him through the conditions he's put me through. So there's this good saying by Imam Jafar as-Sadiq where he'll tell the believer to look up to the sun, and after half a second you're already blinded from it and you have to look away. Imam Jafar as-Sadiq's response to that was, that's your reaction looking at the sun. Imagine if you were looking at the one that created it, right? So as I mentioned before, this is not me saying imagine a godly figure or anything like that, because it's impossible, right? If we were to imagine anything, unfortunately there's no such thing as unique thoughts. All we're doing is taking things from that we already know, our reality, and mixing them up in our mind and creating imagination, right? So there's no such thing as original thoughts. All thoughts come from God at the end of the day, and it comes from His imagination, right? And as I've mentioned, using the bottle analogy before, His imagination is far greater than ours, because His imagination is our reality, and our imagination is subjective to us. So I would end with this surah here, where it mentions, no vision can encompass Him, but He encompasses all vision, for He is the most subtle and all aware. So going back to my first original point about how imagination and creativity and visualization is very important in Islam, and it's beyond just talking about perceiving God, it's also about aiding your deen, right? So if we talked about the concept of visualization, for me, like if you wanted to be a better person, right, the first step is visualization. Visualize who you want to be, the person you want to be, how they would act, how they wake up in the morning, even the little things like how they brush their teeth. You study the mannerisms. So for me, obviously my biggest role model in life is Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and of course I want to be like him. You know, I see him as this righteous, pious leader, and I want to be like him. So me personally, I sleep with this by my bedside table, where it's a signed copy by Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And the reason why this is always on my bedside table is because when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is this straight in my face, right? So the first thought that enters my mind is, Sayyid Hassan is this figure that I want to be like. The second I get out of bed, I need to try my best to mimic his actions. I need to visualize the person he was and embody that. Because if you wanted to become the product of something, the first step is visualization, and everything in between is a process. So that's why I end with, no vision can encompass Him, but He encompasses all full vision, for He's the most subtle and all aware. And we are all, at the end of the day, products of Allah, and we've been blessed with this divine tool of creativity and imagination, and it would be a fool not to use it, you know. We can't be like these Wahhabis and Salafis that see it as this wrong action, right? For example, if they saw a child drawing a face, they call it shirk, which that itself is shirk, because you're comparing the drawing of a child to my complex design, right? So unfortunately, there's some taboo around creativity and imagination in Islam, and I'm here to show you that overall, it is actually an aid in our belief, important in our deen, and it aids our fitrah, and it aids our taqwa at the end of the day, and grows us more conscious of God. Salawat. Can't drop that.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Jazakallah khair, dear brother Hassan, and as always our dear Hajj Mustafa. Indeed, the imagination of these individuals we spoke about throughout the night, one can only dream of reaching that level, you know, imagining and knowing with certainty what the afterlife holds for them, knowing that they have to keep pursuing their journey, their goal towards upholding that struggle, that divine struggle, right until their last breath, no matter what sacrifices they make. And there's a great example of our beloved Sayyid Hassan. In the 1990s, his son Hadi was martyred in an operation. And the response of Sayyid Hassan, it confused, it perplexed the leaders of the West, these Zionists, because his response was not to seek safety for himself or his family. He said, now I know what the martyrs of our nation feel. I know what they feel. And he continued his struggle right up until the end. Sayyid Hassan did not have to give his life. it was very simple. He just had to agree to cease hostilities and give up, forfeit the rights of the people of Palestine, and yet he did not do so. He continued right up until the end and was martyred, of course, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, for his love, once again, another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. With your permission, brothers, inshallah, since it is Fatimiyyah program, our dear brother Saeed was unable to make it for Latmiyyah, but with your permission, inshallah, I would like to recite something short centered around Bibi Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahu alayha, but also in honor of the Shahadat of Lebanon and Gaza. I'd like to ask my brothers Asghar Abbas and Ali Haider to join me, inshallah. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. يا علي اللهم
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Amongst the rubble and waste, bombs fall down like acid rain. Precious children run in haste, yet dreams of freedom remain. Surrounded on every side, we stand with courage and pride. Palestine will never die. Our hopes and dreams are alive. Surrounded on every side, we stand with courage and pride. Lebanon will never die. Our hopes and dreams are alive. Water is denied to the children of Gaza. Nowhere left to hide. Like another Karbala, like another Karbala. Women and children, their tears fall down like raindrops. Back and forth they run, lost among the hailing bombs, lost among the hailing bombs. Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Habib Fatima, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Habib Fatima. Everyone, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Habib Fatima. With arms raised towards the skies, the heavens witness our cries. The world won't fall for the lies. Palestine will never die. With arms raised towards the skies, the heavens witness our cries. The world won't fall for the lies. Lebanon will never die.
Resistance flows through our veins. We will fight through all the pain. Our steadfastness will remain. We will honor all the slain. Fatima Zahra, your pain resonates this day, Lady of Jannah. Karbala is being replayed. Karbala is being replayed. Intercede for us. Palestine cries out in pain, blown into the dust. Nothing left but a blood stain. Nothing left but a blood stain. Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Habiba Fatima. جميعا Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Habiba Fatima. Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Habiba Fatima. We come in peace to the land, they said, concealing their plans to claim every grain of sand and wash the blood from their hands. Al-Quds remains deep inside the hearts of those who believe. Its every inch is our pride. When it bleeds, all of us grieve. Oh, dear Fatima, Karbala is on repeat. Infants of Gaza, cry like Asghar in the heat. Infants of Gaza, cry like Asghar in the heat. Killed before they're born, pure young souls like your Muhsin. Families are torn, devastated and grieving, devastated and grieving. جميعا يا حسين حسين يا حبيب فاطمة يا حسين حسين يا حبيب فاطمة يا حسين حسين يا حبيب فاطمة. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Please stand up for dua faraj. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma kulli waliyil والحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وذليلا وعينا تسكنه أرزك طوى وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل
صلوات بر سلامتی امام زمان سلامتی